Good evening. When I was a kid, when I was 6, my parents moved out in the country. My dad got a lot of land because he was a dentist, and apparently if you're a dentist, you're supposed to have a lot of land and cattle and stuff like that. I've learned that from other dentists in this congregation. And one thing that he had was a very large garden, and I'm going to guess it was about 50 by 100 feet. It was big enough that we used a tractor to till it in the spring to get it ready, and I hated that garden. There wasn't much in it that I liked, except for maybe the watermelons at the end of summer. But I was out there having to hoe and having to rake and having to spread cow manure and standing on the back of the tiller, on the back of the tractor to give it weight with my brothers, hanging on for dear life so it would sink down in the ground enough to be able to till up the ground, and picking peas in the middle of 95 degrees, and peas I didn't like. And at the end, having to get all the refuse down, put it in a pile, and then feed the corn stalks and stuff to the cows. And we took care of cattle as well. But between the two, I hated that garden more than I hated the cows. And so when I was a kid, when I would read about Cain and Abel, I always had a little sympathy for Cain, because I always thought that his sacrifice of what he had to do tilling that ground without having a tractor and without having metal implements like we do now was a whole lot more of a sacrifice than, stupid old Abel who just watched sheep walk around all day, And so I always had a little soft spot for Cain, except for the fact that he killed his brother. So let's go ahead and read Genesis 4, starting in verse 1. I'm going to read now the NIV tonight. Adam made love to his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, "With the help of the Lord I have brought forth a man." Later she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain, his offering, he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Now Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out into the field." While they were out in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" Then the Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out for me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer of the earth." Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." But the Lord said to him, "Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one found him would kill him. So Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So when I read this recently and read it with a little more purpose than just reading through it to get to the next passage, I had some thoughts, and I had a couple thoughts, and the more I thought about it, I had several more. And so I have 5 points, this small passage we can take from that to learn a little bit more about God and a little bit more about our lives. And the first one is that sin has effects beyond ourselves. Adam and Eve introduced sin into mankind, and if that had not happened, this would never have happened. So the fact that Adam and Eve sinned and brought sin into the world was not a direct but an indirect relationship to the fact that Cain committed this murder against Abel. And then certainly we can see that in our lives, that when parents and grandparents do things that can be visited on their children in terms of sin. The second point I thought of is that God gives us all two very special gifts. The first gift is the gift of life, and the second gift is he gives us the gift of choice. And he gives that to everyone. And the third thing I thought of was that we should do what God tells us to do. When you read this passage, you can just infer from the fact that they had sacrifices that they knew they were supposed to do that. And you can infer from God's conversation with Cain that he knew exactly what he was supposed to have done, that he did not do what was good when he brought the fruits and the vegetables, that he was supposed to have done an animal sacrifice. And Cain took it upon himself to do that because he made the choice to do that, which of course was sin. The fourth thing I thought of was that not doing what God tells us to do is sin and then invites further sin. So certainly him doing the sacrifice that he did was not right, and so that was a sin. But then that, as God was talking to Cain, lets sin crouch at the door. So that one thing that he did, which was a sin, then led to another sin, which was the killing of his brother, then led to another sin, which he was kind of denying even knowing where Abel was. And then that's just, and certainly we know that to be true now, that even such things as telling a white lie, and someone kind of asks you about it, and then you have to tell another lie, and then another one, and you cover it up, and you can see how sin begats sin. But the fifth thing, and maybe the most important out of this passage is that God is forgiving. He certainly would have been within his right to have done to Cain whatever he wanted to. But he did punish him and send him from the land, to send him from out the presence of God, and have a hard life. But he didn't take his life, and he made sure no one else was going to take his life either, so he could have a family and have children and have that continue. And so I think that's just important things for us to remember. Just a very small passage in the Old Testament, but it certainly has a lot of meaning to our own lives and how we should think about God and what he expects of us and how we should live our lives. If any of you have any need this evening, please come forward and we will serve you.